you go.
Risk assessment, method statement, basically RAMS. The sole purpose of RAMS is to provide a safe method of working for everybody. This covers the person who is carrying out the task, people who could be directly affected by the task being carried out, or indirectly affected by the task being carried out, damage to plant, buildings or the environment, short or long-term effects. It is impossible to reduce the risk to zero. You can only reduce the risk to a level that is acceptable. It is your responsibility to work in a safe manner. By all means obtain help and advice to work out the safest way of carrying out the task. But it is you who is going to be carrying out the task, and you who will end up in hospital dead if it all goes wrong. And it is you who could cause this to happen to someone else. If you cannot find a safe way to reduce the risk to an acceptable level, then don't do it.
Okay.
Right, note the following. You must list all chemicals, including cleaners, any solvents that you're going to use, along with safety data sheets, cost sheets and waste transfer notes.
Okay.
There are three basic types of RAMS: generic, site-specific and dynamic. Three basic types, 1 and 2, both have sections, tabs. First section tab is a method statement, what, when and how, and the second section tab is the risk assessment, what could go wrong and how you are going to eliminate it going wrong. Generic contains the following major information: client, site, job reference number, start date and time, duration, scope of works. Everything you are going to do and exactly how you are going to do it. Location, any access equipment, special tools, any H&S issues regarding what you are doing and any impact on site. If you are going to use subcontract labour, you need to itemise what they are going to do. They need to supply their own RAMS as well. Do you require site to do anything? All engineers' names, van regs, etc. Is it a site condition that is 2 men working at all times? Can you park on site? Can you only unload on site? Is there a time restriction when you can gain van access to site? How are you going to remove, dispose of redundant materials, etc.? Some of what is in site-specific may have to be included in generic. Right, site-specific. All from generic, plus a site visit to visually check the access to the working area and the working area, i.e. roof working, safety harness required, confined space working, occupied area used by site staff, general public. Is getting to the working area going to be a problem? Are there any time working restrictions during the day? Is noise going to be a problem? If a tower or powered access equipment is required, what route are you going to use? Will it impact on anybody else? Any H&S issues? What specific site restrictions, if any, apply? Do you need any permits to work? If so, what type and from whom? Is site induction required and when? Are any other site works going to take place before or during your works that could have an impact on your works or others? Dynamic may be required following the submission of the generic or site-specific RAMS, as they are issued on the day of site attendance by the engineer. The working conditions may have changed. Some sites can require dynamic risk assessments for each and every day of attendance, regardless of any changes. Dynamic risk assessments can only be completed by you. It is not law, but if you do not comply with site requests, then you will not be allowed on site. If anything goes wrong and H&S get involved, ignorance is no excuse. They will investigate everything to the limit and then prosecute to the hilt. From the engineers through supervisors, managers, directors and owners. It's their job and they're good at it.
Go.
Risk assessment. Basically, the risk assessment has two main front sections, Section 1 and Section 2. Section 1. This lists the activity, hazard and effect. Activity. What are you going to use? This needs to have separate activities for each type of activity, i.e. working alone, using ladders or steps, working on gas, oil, water or refrigeration equipment, working on anything that has an electrical supply, powered access equipment, roof working, confined space. Every single activity you are going to do. Also, if you are doing something that could be affected by others, i.e. you are in a plant room and a builder is repairing the roof, you are not doing anything on or with the roof, but the hazard is from the roof works. This must also be listed. This is also what a dynamic risk assessment would record. Hazard. What might happen, go wrong. I.e. you're going to work on equipment that has an electrical supply. Hazard. Electric shock. You state that you are going to isolate the supply. You think that this has reduced the hazard to zero, but somebody could switch it back on. In effect, you have not reduced the hazard at all. It is still a hazard. You need to record that you're going to isolate, lock off, or remove the fuses and display signage to demonstrate that you have put measures into place to reduce the hazard to as near as zero as possible. This applies to each and every hazard. Section 2. Risk to whom, including risk to property. You need to list who, what could be at risk, i.e. engineers, site staff, general public, equipment, property, etc. If it could be affected, however remote, then you need to list it.
Go.
Risk assessment, section 3. Initial rating before control. Severity multiplied by likelihood equals to primary risk. Severity. What could the result be? These are numbered 1 to 6. 1 equals a minor single injury. 6 equals death. Refer to attached key. Enter a number that you think is equal to the effect. Likelihood. How likely is it to happen? These are numbered 1 to 6. 1, very unlikely. 6, certain. Again, refer to attached key. Enter a number that you think is equal to the likelihood. Primary risk. This number is the result of multiplying the severity number by the likelihood number. You must always use the worst highest severity number that is possible. Do not reduce the risk or hazard by thinking it's lower. Section 4. Control risk by. You list everything, measure that you are going to put into place to reduce the primary risk to an acceptable risk level. Never less than 1, because it is impossible to reduce the risk to 0. It's not acceptable to just enter wear PPE. You need to list what item of PPE, i.e. safety footwear, goggles, gloves, eye protection, hazards, etc. See hazards regarding electrical supplies. These must contain every control measure you propose to put into place to reduce the primary risk. It has to contain all controls and measures, not just that the engineer is trained, qualified, attended toolboxes, etc. i.e. if using steps, ladders, You have to record that these will be inspected and are fit for purpose and will be placed on a sound level base and secured. If necessary, protection barriers will be erected around the steps ladders to reduce the risk of them being accidentally knocked over and also to protect others if something is dropped.
Go.
Risk Assessment, Section 5. Residual Risk. You record a number as per Section 3. This takes into account the control measures you propose putting into place. Refer to attached key. Note, you will also need to list all chemicals, including cleaners, solvents that you're going to use, along with safety data sheets, cost sheets, and waste transfer notes, etc. Some of the above covers the extreme. However, the above is what you must keep in mind, and may need to include all of it and more.